We ask that the witness testify for the court in more detail about exactly how valiantly Sasuke fought off the attackers. And I guess the people don't object, even though it seems super extra. No, the people don't object, Your Honor. Emma's playing passively. Either I'm onto something here or I'm walking into a trap. Screw it. All in on the former. Needle guns. Sasuke med records. Needles. Needle gun, Sasuke med records, and needles. Sasuke was outnumbered from the beginning and protecting me the whole time. It didn't matter that we were ambushed or that the blue bloods had projectiles. Sasuke took up Yoru in both hands and swatted their needles out of the air like a graceful swatter. He fought off 4 attackers and without sustaining a single injury. Mock him if you dare for being captured. But that's not a failure, not by any general's definition of the word. Hearing Makoto describe Sasuke's heroism, it's almost more impressive the second time. Definitely fought without a care for himself. And there's evidence to show it. Protecting me the whole time. Well, presumably it's the injuries one, but yeah, they did. Took up Yaru. Yes, he did. Without sustaining a single injury. Well, that's not true. Med records. I can't remember if I turned off the timer, because this is the thing they added in one of the updates. I think it was like an accessibility thing where they made it so during this bit, when you object, you don't have that like 2-second time limit or whatever it was, and I don't remember if I made it so that the time limit is off. Unscathed is the last thing anybody would say about my client after the events of that day. One look at his medical data from when he was arrested will tell you that much. What are you getting at, Counsellor? The defendant's injuries were sustained at the Blue Blood's den, not at Crane Tower. The police didn't even find 1 drop of blood anywhere near that service elevator. Well, that is a miracle, a bloodless ambush. But the fact that no blood was found makes it all the more painfully obvious what actually happened to that elevator panel. The elevator panel? My client broke half the bones in his left hand smashing it up. Did you really? I might have. There was a lot of adrenaline at the time. Did you not form a proper fist? Was your wrist not in alignment with your forearm? As I said, Sarah, there was a lot of adrenaline. Do you deny that his medical record clearly shows his left hand was broken? Your Honour, what does it matter that the defendant broke his left hand closing that elevator? It changes nothing about the witness's testimony. His testimony stands. His testimony's been contradicted. Well, it has been contradicted because he's like, oh, he did it without sustaining a single injury. He was so heroic and amazing. I still don't know where she's really going with this. I think the point is she's saying he wasn't in any position to... He wielded Yoru with 2 hands. So he wielded Yoru with 2 hands, and then again, that might suggest why he was unable to chop off Trey's head with 1. I'm still going to raise because I'm fairly confident. I don't know why the blind is -2. But yes, I will raise. The testimony has been contradicted. Of course it does. How so? Shit, did I mess up? Oh, fuck's sake. Alright, well, the blind isn't... I don't know why it's saying minus when the blind is 3, but... Sorry, let me just... I mean, it changes something about the witness's testimony in that some of what he said was not accurate. Fine. Okay, whatever. I assume this means about the witness's testimony in general. Try to think before you speak, Counsellor. This adjutant has enough trouble staying focused as is. Well, it may be true that the wrinkle doesn't change the witness's testimony. It does change the nature of the evidence you had him identify for the court, which is his fucking testimony. That's the... Okay. The katana... Yoru. Its name is Yoru. We get it. Testimony from Makoto Akari about how he and Sasuke were ambushed at Crane Tower. He identified Creek's pod as the 4 men who attacked them and said that Sasuke defending him by wielding with both hands. Yes, broken hand mean he couldn't wield Yoru properly. Alright, well, it makes the whole chopping off Trey's head iffier, but it means that he probably wouldn't have the strength to shove it through Chopin's torso, because he wouldn't be able to do that with both. He would need both hands for that, and he couldn't grip it with his left. Makoto claims that Sasuke pushed him into the lift with Yoru's sheath before violently mashing the panel with his left hand to close the doors. We get it. Did you have a point to make, Counselor? There's something odd about the katana that's been entered into evidence. Something that makes no sense given what we've learned about the outcome of this ambush. Namely, the sword's prints. It's got to be the prints, because the blood and chipping are unrelated to the ambush. Namely, the fingerprints that were found on the sword's handle. Fingerprints belonging to Sasuke's right hand. You're contradicting yourself, Counselor. We've already discussed how it was your client's left hand he broke closing off the elevator. There's nothing contradictory about his using his right arm to wield the blade. It can be like this because Sasuke has 2 hands. People are correct. The sword found at the scene of the crime had my client's right hand prints on its handle. Despite the fact that this witness just testified that Sasuke was swinging it with both hands. Like a graceful swatter, specifically. Oh yeah, he did say that. So did the little tyke misremember? It was a chaotic situation where he feared for his life. The court should hardly expect him to have kept track of such an inconsequential detail. Have you already forgotten my magnanimous powers of recollection? The tactics from earlier backfired. I'll have you know I can recite all of my subordinates' birthdays down to the hour. Write them all down so I can calculate their moon signs later. Doesn't matter whether the witness is mistaken about Sasuke's grip, Your Honor, because we have a much bigger issue to address. Why this sword has only my client's fingerprints on it. Interesting. I will say it briefly glanced my mind that would be relevant, but this actually presents like a line of events where he had the fingerprints on it, and then no fingerprints, and then fingerprints again. Interesting. Makoto testifies that Sasuke wielded the katana in his defense, an act of bravery that ended with my client face down on the floor of Crane Tower. He later woke up held captive in the lower wards. I'll state the obvious here and say while he was unconscious, he was moved. And so the sword we have in the record must have also been handled by the 5th victim stabbed through the heart. Probably not. Makoto, definitely not. Leader of the Blue Blood Pod, face ID'd by Makoto's second shot, second to last, dead. Our poor victim Creek, of course. What do you mean? Sasuke was knocked unconscious at Crane Tower. That means someone must have brought his sword down to the lower wards. And the only person who had the opportunity to do so would have been his captors. You mean his victims? Withdrawn. Either voluntarily or in response to... What film was it where it was like... I can't remember what it was. Oh god, it might even have been bloody Suits. Where someone was like going on... The lawyer was going on a tirade. It wasn't Suits, it was Community. There's like an episode of Community, and I can't remember the context around it, where like Annie is acting as a lawyer, and she like kept saying stuff that was like blatantly testifying or stuff like that, and she'd say it and immediately go, "Withdrawn." Is that why you hit your wife? Withdrawn. Is that why you drink and pop pills? Withdrawn. Are you a virgin? Withdrawn. Oh, it was the Yam episode. Yeah, an attorney may withdraw their comments. Officially, juries are to disregard any comments that have been withdrawn and should not take them into consideration. The defence is forgetting a fairly simple fact, Your Honour. There's more than one way to hold a sword. Oh, Worm? In case the defense needs it clarified, Creek could have simply held the sword by its scabbard. Oh, Emma, this is a very elementary mistake you've just made. Absolutely he couldn't have, because it was used to shove Makoto into the lift. That's not possible, Your Honor. Makoto had already testified that Sasuke left the sword scabbard with him when he thrust him back into the elevator. Yoru's sheath was thrust into my arms, pushing me back into the elevator, and I landed on my rear. I see, and since a cursed sword can't be resheathed until it's tasted blood. Yes, Your Honor, very well said. We would have found the scabbard of the Blue Blood's den if Creek or his men had taken it with them. I've no idea how Emma fucked that up. That seems like either she's really rattled, or that is the developers giving us an easy win, because I can't see any other way that could have happened. Instead, I imagine Makoto took it home. You think he took key evidence from his own assault and kept it from the police? Is it key evidence? Were his clothes key evidence? Of course I did. As if I would trust officers of the law to properly handle a family heirloom as precious as Yoru's sheath. Impressive insight, Adone. But what does this actually mean? Is there some mistake with how the evidence was handled? There's no mistakes here, it's all done with intention. The intention to frame my client. Oh. By putting his fingerprints onto the sword after the real culprit had already handled it. What a load of bullshit. And the crowd goes wild. Though it does make a certain kind of sense. Because it's the truth, I did wipe that katana's handle down after removing it from Trey's throat. Sasuke just happened to be foolish enough to pick it up himself afterwards. It's frustrating having to keep all my best cards up my sleeve this time around. But the look on Emma's face when I do get to toss them out is... The people are more than ready to counter if it pleases the court. Oh. The defense had made an admirable effort to barrel ahead with this theory. Admirable but predictable, with the Foundation this week charging ahead and hoping the court won't notice is the only option. Let us speak of the facts. This Creek character led a targeted ambush on the air to House Ikaria, knowing he'd be guarded by a full security team. The Blue Bloods successfully sabotaged and intercepted Makoto's lift at the precise floor they wanted, meaning they knew exactly where he'd be and when. And they brought with them drugs capable of disabling a veteran with military-grade mods. Planning and attention to detail may be foreign concepts to the defense, but they should be at least able to recognize them. Huh. Sorry, that line stands out to me. So is the defense seriously suggesting that all that preparation Creek's pod wouldn't bother to wear gloves? I'm glad you asked so nicely. Ah! Creek's fingerprints were on the needle guns. I mean, that's a really easy one. All in. We don't need to speculate about whether they wore gloves or not. Not when we have Creek's fingerprints on a weapon recovered from the crime scene. That is... a pretty good point, actually. Guess those guys were sloppier than we thought. Those blackguards were barefaced when they attacked us. Idiots. As if there wouldn't be repercussions for their actions, the least they could have done was disguise themselves. Strike that from the record, Your Honor. Along with any future comments that suggest the Ikaria would want revenge against these victims. I was only speaking a plain truth. Creek was their leader, correct? If even Creek wasn't wearing gloves, it's hard to imagine that none of them got their prints onto Yoru. Unless the sword was indeed wiped down at some point afterwards. Like right around the time the true culprit was looking for Sasuke to take the fall. It's a spicy theory. It's just that, Your Honor, a theory. A far-fetched, unstable theory that stacks presuppositions upon each other. Like a flapjack chef substituting quantity for quality. I think you mean that the other way round. Substituting quality for quantity. Because if you substitute quantity for quality, you're making a small amount of very high quality stuff. If it's the other way round, you're saying it doesn't need to be high quality if there's a lot of it. Fundamental grammar error there, Emma. I'll rephrase, because that was bad grammar. This inconsistency is easily answered without jumping through the defense's absurdly arranged hoops. That's a little better. We already know that the Blue Bloods has successfully taken down the Ikaria's head of security. And we already know that they went out of their way to take the defendant captive despite him not being their original target. Furthermore, as the defense has belaboured, we know that they decided to take a useless piece of steel with them from the scene of their crime. Useless? If we ask why, the answer is obvious. Because orcas are superstitious and immature. They wanted a trophy, and what is there to do with the trophy? Other than polish it. Oh, that's why the cloth was flagged. Damn, that is a good comeback. The cloth from Creek's desk. I knew she flagged it in the arcs for some reason, but she thought this many steps ahead? The defense is correct. The sword was wiped down before Sasuke took it up as his murder weapon. By the very same victims he'd go on to claim with it. That is completely logical explanation, damn it. How do we respond to that, Adone? We check. We don't. I can't. It makes perfect sense. So does that mean what she's described actually happened? Not at all. I wiped that sword off myself because my prints are on it. Same as I wipe my prints off every other... Right. If I can't find fault with Emma's conclusion, I need to find fault with the logic that led her there. I mean, we're still arguing over the prints, but I still don't think he'd have the physical strength to... maybe he would with the mods. But the mods weren't working because of the shockings. Maybe that wore off. It's all bloody arguable, you know? I see. And how do you do that? By adjusting my aim. As the people say, Your Honor, no one's fingerprints but my clients are on the murder weapon. That only makes sense if he's guilty or being framed. I mean, the actual answer is neither. I mean, Morgan did sort of frame him, but it's also that in this case, he wasn't framed to have the sword. It was just bad chance that he stumbled upon it. And there's no evidence to suggest he's been framed because his captors had valid reasons for wiping off the sword. That's true. They did have good reason to wipe off the sword. But that's not the murder weapon I'm referring to. The gun, presumably. Tank's gun used to shoot him and Creek. Only Prince Sasuke's left hand. His left hand that was broken that he was unable to pull the trigger with. The broken bat, only partials, not helpful. Needle guns, Creek's prints, not at the scene. Has to be the Mag US. All in. Oh, no. This gun is the murder weapon I'm referring to. What? The police are confident that this Mag US is the gun that was used to kill Tanks and Creek. And your client was arrested with it on his person, and it has your client's prints on it. But it was owned by Tanks. And it doesn't have Tanks' prints on it. The record shows that Sasuke's are the only prints on that doohickey. So that means this Tanks guy never laid a finger on his own gun? It's entirely possible that Tanks simply liked to polish his gun too. In private, sorry. Sounds like a euphemism. Anyway. I mean, I don't like that that's an Archer reference, but... So he was polishing it right up until the moment his captor grabbed it and used it against him. Captive. That should be captive. More phrasing. Was it before or after his internal bleeding that my client took the gun off Tanks without him even laying a finger on it first? Before or after being tortured that he got the gun with no struggle? They could have wrestled over the gun while it was out of reach. Tanks had no injuries beside the hole in his chest. How'd he get into a struggle and not get so much as a scratch? The likelihood of that scenario would seem to come down to the order in which each individual died, no? Yes, Your Honour. Then perhaps we ought to hear some more detailed testimony about that? Of course. The defence has no more questions for this witness, Your Honour. We don't object. Hold on, what are you saying? Okie dokie then, closing the connection. I said wait, is Sasuke... Makoto seemed to be in good spirits, wouldn't you say? Yeah, he was his usual irreproachable self. So how can you find something about that to be depressed over? I'm ashamed that he testified at all. His appearance here runs the risk of sullying the house's visage with my mistakes. Well, he couldn't exactly slip the subpoena by claiming he had homework to do. You of all people should understand that the house doesn't have to appear in court if it truly doesn't want to. A fine levied at your accounts is always preferable to a smudge staining your reputation. But he did testify. Yes, and he no doubt went directly against one or more family elders to do so. He should not be incurring debts for my sake. So he put himself at a disadvantage for you? Do you think Makoto would want you to apologise? Or do you think he'd want you to thank him? He's young. He doesn't know what he wants yet. Alright, which police officer is this going to be? Oh, Sato. Not who I expected, but makes sense. Don't remember a voice either. Yumi Sato, medical examiner. Yumi. Sarah. Dr. Sato, we're very grateful for your work sorting through the large number of reports related to this case. Sato. Medical examiner, likes brushed metal, grilled fish, and cardamom. Dislikes frame interpolation. What's wrong with frame interpolation? That could be really good and useful. Split ends surveys. Splurges on live show tickets. Favourite colour, green. Coat, very easy to sanitize. Phew, yeah, 5 bodies, all high priority. Had my head underwater for a good while there. We prefer not to tax you with repeating every grisly detail. But if you could, would you please walk the court through the time of death for each victim and the manner in which they were determined? Right. I mean, this is all... I feel like we're circling a point here that he couldn't have used the gun with his left hand because it was broken. Like, it seems we're going through quite a big hubbubaloo to not address that fact until the end. Right. From the top. Anker Tan, aka Tanks, had a mishmash of street legal and chop shop mods along his forearms. None of them were particularly up to date, but they were all working and they did monitor his heart rate. Tank's heart stopped at 9:44 PM. The cause of death was... The slug had a hollow design intended to shatter inside the target. There's no mistaking that he was killed by his own gun, the Mag US, from a distance of 1 to 2 meters. Next up is Sungmin Trey Trench. He also had relatively low-end mods installed, and they showed his heart stopping at 4:45 PM. Didn't he have his head chopped off, though? Oh, yeah, I guess he bled out before Miller did. So what's this writing on the right? It's backwards. I'm going to look at that flipped. Anyway. He died from exsanguination, blood loss, resulting from a laceration across his neck by a sharp metal blade. That wasn't the only injury his body sustained, though, was it? No, it was not. Posthumously, his skull was... saw no evil. Heavens Miller Smiles! That name. Received a puncture wound straight through his jugular vein. Then the blade was withdrawn, exacerbating blood loss, and he was likely unconscious within seconds of falling to the ground. Miller had mods, but had evidently gone to great lengths to remove all monitoring tech from them, and he was not found with any electronics on his person. Using purely medical means, I narrowed his time of death to a window of 10 minutes between 9:40 and 9:50. Even though I killed him third and he was the second to die. That brings us to Creek. Yes, like Tanks, Lakers Creek Christoph was shot once with a hollow slug from a distance of 1 to 2 meters. However, the slug penetrated just below their solar plexus and failed to completely shatter when it impacted a low-end spinal brace mod. As a result, Creek didn't die immediately. It was my medical opinion that Creek would have slowly bled out over the course of about 5 minutes. Their mod didn't have any biomonitoring capabilities. So, like with Miller, I've done what I can to narrow the time of death to a 10-minute window between 9:40 and 9:50 PM. So he was barely modded and he stayed conscious that whole time anyway? Summary of findings. Cause of death. Why is this the only one that's being put into the evidence? Likely a relatively low-cost, low-tech corrective measure for a childhood injury or growth defect. Wow. Isn't his brother... Sorry, their brother also, like, on some sort of mod or medication? Subject's childhood medical records indicate DT3, but no signs of the disease exist. Most likely, subject recovered due to natural robustness, presumably compared to their brother, who did not recover enough. Oh, no, never mind, they are all in here. Miller, subject was stabbed in the neck with a bladed instrument 2 to 3 centimeters thick. Puncture wound is 13 centimeters deep. I mean, that doesn't rule out a katana, but it seems unlikely. Analysis of the subject's mods indicates their self-defense mechanisms were activated shortly prior to death. Subject most likely faced their attacker and attempted to fight back. That's probably the only relevant part from the other autopsies. But we do have one other context clue to work with. This datapad was found very close to Creek's body, and technicians confirmed it requires Creek's fingerprints for most functions. That means it's unlikely that anyone else would have been able to manipulate it. And we found that the last action taken on it was an attempted dark card transaction that failed at 9:44 PM. What could cause a dark card transaction to fail? Either they hit cancel or the card itself was jostled, interrupting the scan. As if the datapad was suddenly dropped? Speculation. How much qualification does one need to understand that card readers can be finicky, Your Honor? True enough. Chip, swipe, pin, tap? Just let me buy the damn balloon animal, you clown. So, taking that digital evidence into account, Creek must have been shot almost exactly at the same time as Tanks. Thank you. There's one more body you examine for this case, yes? Officer Tariq Chopin. I didn't need to determine his time of death. As a police officer, he had standard suite of police-issued biomonitors. So we know that Officer Chopin's heart stopped at 10:14:04 PM, triggering an automatic 10999 alert, officer down. Lighting up that crime scene like a firecracker and ensuring every cop in the city would come running, royally pissed and safeties off. Chopin was impaled through his back by a long, thin blade. It severed his aorta, and as a result, he died instantly. So he died instantly. He definitely didn't stagger, but he was dragged. To summarize then... Alright, let me have a look at this. A long-bladed instrument, 2 to 3 centimeters thick. Okay, so that does match between Morgan's blade and the katana. To summarize then, we can conclude that Tanks' gun was taken from him before 9:44 PM. Him and Creek were shot with it. Their attacker, out of ammunition, took up a sword and stabbed Miller in the throat before slicing into Trey's neck. This individual then proceeded to posthumously crush Trey's skull by striking it so hard they shattered a baseball bat. as Creek bled to death on the other side of the room. Finally, when Officer Chopin entered the scene, they stabbed him in the back, before finally being apprehended by Officer Rogers. That's all correct as far as we understand it.